Ever get that feeling, that feeling, like you're kind of standing on the edge of something huge, something
Yes. I
mysterious?
think we all know that feeling.
That's exactly what this deep dive feels like,
Yes.
honestly. We're cracking open Un viaje entre los mundos. That's a journey between worlds.
Oh,
Yeah,
exactly.
by Eagle Skyfire. And trust me, this is not your grandma's travel guide.
Right.
This is about exploring the possibility of, well, other worlds, like literally different dimensions existing alongside ours.
And what I find so fascinating is how the idea of multiple dimensions, and I know it might seem kind of out there, but it's something that resonates across so many cultures and spiritual traditions.
True.
It speaks to that very human longing, I think we all have it, to understand what lies beyond what we can see, beyond our immediate perception.
Absolutely. It's like we've always intuitively sensed that there's more. We just haven't quite figured out how to, access it.
Right, exactly.
And this book suggests that maybe, just maybe, we
Yeah.
can.
Yeah.
But, and this is a bit, but before we, book our tickets to, well, wherever, the book really stresses the importance of preparation.
Of course.
Because you wouldn't climb Mount Everest without training first.
Exactly. You need the right gear, the right mindset. It's the same idea here.
It's about being prepared mentally, emotionally even.
Un viaje entre los mundos talks about cultivating this inner readiness.
Okay, I like that. Inner readiness.
And that can be through practices like meditation, grounding, really honing your intention. It's like, imagine if you're setting an intention to connect with your intuition, right?
Okay.
It's almost like you're programming your spiritual GPS. Oh, I like that.
To guide you to those experiences, to amplify that energy you're seeking.
Okay, that's a really cool way to think about it. I like that. But let's be real, we're all here for the really juicy stuff.
Right.
We're here for the actual world hopping.
Of course. Of course, that's the fun part.
So what kind of techniques are we talking about here? How do we get there?
Well, the book delves into a bunch of methods. We're talking breathwork, visualization. There's even stuff about using crystals and drums.
Right.
Now, while these techniques might seem a little out there, to some,
Maybe.
they actually have very deep roots in ancient traditions all around the world.
Yeah, it's true. So when I think about, shamans using drumming to connect with the spirit world, that's not actually that different from what we're talking about, is it? You've got it. It's all about shifting your consciousness, accessing these different levels of awareness. And what I find really intriguing is that science is starting to kind of catch up to some of these ancient practices. Like, there have been studies on breathwork that show how specific breathing patterns can actually change our brainwave activity.
Wow.
And even influence our emotional states. It's really incredible. It's like we can breathe ourselves into a different state of being.
Wow. Okay,
Wow.
that's kind of blowing my mind a little bit, I got to be honest.
Right.
But it's not all just woo vibes and good energy,
Yeah.
right? Because the book also talks about these encounters with guides along the way.
Yes.
Like spirit animals, ancestors, and even bumping into beings of light. How
Yeah.
literally are we supposed to take that?
Right. And that's where things get really interesting, I think, because Un viaje entre los mundos doesn't shy away from the fact that there are all sorts of interpretations of these encounters.
Oh, interesting.
Some people might experience these things as literal beings from other realms, and others might see them as, symbolic representations of different aspects of their own psyche.
So my spirit animal could be both,
Yeah.
an actual guide and a reflection of, say, the courage I'm trying to cultivate within myself.
Exactly. You're getting it. It's about recognizing the language of your subconscious, right? And how it communicates through these symbols.
Right.
So these guides, they could be projections of our own deepest wisdom, or maybe even these echoes of something more. We just don't know for sure, and that's okay. The book encourages us to approach these encounters with an open mind, with that sense of curiosity, rather than getting too caught up in finding concrete answers.
I do love a good mystery.
Right.
But even in this, grand adventure of self-discovery, there are bound to be challenges, right? I mean, what's a hero's journey without facing a few metaphorical dragons? So what happens when things get a little, spooky in these other realms?
That's a great question, and it's actually where a lot of the real growth happens, I think.
Oh, how so?
Because it's about learning to navigate the full spectrum of experiences. Not just the light, but the shadows, too. Just like we wouldn't wander into a dark forest at night without a map and a flashlight.
Right.
Un viaje entre los mundos emphasizes the importance of what it calls spiritual hygiene.
Spiritual hygiene. Okay, now you got to elaborate on that, because what does that even mean? Is that taking out the psychic trash?
You could say that. Think of it as like building your energetic immune system.
Okay.
So you're creating healthy boundaries, right? Clearing out any negative influences and calling upon those protective energies both within you and around you.
So it's about approaching these explorations with wisdom and discernment, not just like blindly jumping in.
Exactly.
So it's about packing your metaphorical sage and crystals along with your sense of adventure.
I love it. Yes.
Okay, I'm into it. But it makes you wonder, with all this talk about the challenges, the need for protection, why even bother venturing into these realms if it's not all like sunshine and rainbows?
It's a good question. And I think ultimately it's because it's about so much more than just having, these cool experiences. It's about healing. It's about transforming. It's about really unlocking our full potential as human beings. And remember how we were talking about these realms being almost like reflections of our own consciousness?
Yes.
Well, Un viaje entre los mundos suggests that by facing our fears, by confronting those shadows in these kind of symbolic landscapes, we can actually begin to heal really deep-seated wounds within ourselves.
So it's almost like shadow work, but on a multidimensional level.
Yes, you got it.
All right, so we're back and ready to, really map out this whole interdimensional journey.
Let's do it.
But before we even think about packing our bags, metaphorically speaking, of course.
Of course.
Where do we even begin this kind of exploration?
Well, In Viaje entre los Mundos talks about creating a sacred space as a foundation for the work.
Okay.
But we're not talking about like building a meditation yurt in your living room.
Right. Yeah, unless that's your thing. And then by all means, go for it.
Exactly.
Right, but it's got to be a little more like accessible than that for most people, right?
Yeah.
So what does creating a sacred space actually look like for like the everyday explorer?
It's really about intentionally crafting an environment that supports your inner work.
Okay.
So it could be as simple as like a quiet corner in your home
Okay.
or a spot in nature that you find really peaceful,
Okay.
or even just like a mental space you create through visualization.
Oh, okay. Interesting. So like if holding a certain crystal helps me tap into a sense of calm, that could be part of it?
Absolutely, you got it. It's less about the, like the stuff and more about the intention.
Yeah.
Think of it like an artist preparing their studio. They choose a space with good light, they lay out their tools, they create this whole atmosphere that allows their creativity to flow.
Right. Yeah.
Creating a sacred space is kind of like that. It's about setting the stage for a really powerful inner experience.
Okay, I'm really digging this whole artist studio analogy.
Yeah.
So we've set the stage, we're feeling those creative vibes. Now, how do we actually like step through the door
Right.
into these other realms? What are some of the techniques that Eagle Skyfire suggests?
Well, one technique that the book really delves into is breath work. And I know it might seem almost too simple,
Right?
but the breath is so incredibly powerful. It's like a direct line to our nervous system.
Right. And so by consciously changing our breathing patterns, we can actually like shift our state of mind. We can open ourselves to these different levels of awareness.
Wait, hold on. Because I know people say just breathe all the time. But how does that actually work to connect us to, other dimensions?
Okay, yeah. Think about it this way. When we're stressed, our breath gets really shallow and rapid, right? But when we're relaxed, our breath naturally deepens, it slows down. The book highlights all these different breathing techniques that can kind of consciously induce those relaxed states.
Okay.
And even like induce these trance-like states similar to what, people experience in meditation.
So it's not just about like getting zen, it's about changing our actual brain chemistry to become more receptive to, I don't know, psychic frequencies or something. You got it. And this isn't just like some new age theory. There's actual scientific research coming out now.
Yeah.
About how practices like breath work can alter our brainwave activity and influence our emotional states.
Okay, now that's what I call a mind-body connection.
Right.
But what about some of these other techniques that are mentioned in Un viaje entre los mundos? Like what about using tools like crystals or drums? I got to be honest, that part always feels a little mysterious to me.
I hear you. But it's important to remember that these tools have been used for centuries in all sorts of cultures for spiritual practices.
Right.
Like take crystals, for example. While the science is still kind of catching up on this,
Right.
a lot of people believe that they have these like unique energetic vibrations that can actually influence our own energy fields.
Okay, so it's not like a crystal is going to like magically teleport me to another dimension.
Right.
but holding one might help me shift my energy to a place where those realms feel more accessible.
Yes, exactly. You're shifting your vibration. And drumming is kind of similar.
Okay.
These rhythmic beats can be so powerful for inducing these altered states of consciousness.
Right,
Think
right,
about like the trance-inducing rhythms that are used in shamanic rituals.
right.
They've been transporting people to other realms for centuries.
Yeah, it's almost primal, isn't it? Like, it's like something hardwired into us
It really is.
from, like, our ancestors gathering around a fire,
Yes.
feeling that pulse, that rhythm.
Yes. There's definitely something to that. And, when used intentionally, tools like these can be really powerful allies in our exploration. But I think it's important to remember that they are just tools.
Yeah.
The true journey, the real transformation, that all happens within.
Okay. I'm feeling the need to ground myself for a minute, honestly,
Take a breath.
because this is a lot to take in.
It is. It is.
But before we go any further, I want to hear more about those encounters with the spirit guides, the beings from other realms. Like, how can we approach those experiences with that wisdom and discernment that we're talking about?
That's the million-dollar question.
It really is.
And it's one we'll unpack right after a quick break.
Okay, so we've talked about, setting the stage, creating that sacred space. We even learned a few techniques to kind of like open those interdimensional doors. But what happens when we actually come face to face with the unfamiliar? Like what's out there?
That's where discernment comes in. And it's so important.
Right.
Remember those spirit guides we talked about?
Yeah.
Un viaje entre los mundos really emphasizes that not every encounter in these realms, not every being you might encounter, is necessarily benevolent or positive.
Oh, wow.
Just like in our everyday lives, not everyone we meet has our best interest at heart.
Right. That's true.
It's the same in these other realms.
Okay, now that's a little spooky. So it's like, even in other dimensions, we've got to watch out for the bad vibes.
Well, think of it this way. If you're exploring a new city, you wouldn't just wander down a dark alley at night without, taking some precautions.
Right.
You'd trust your gut. You'd stay aware of your surroundings. It's the same principle here.
Okay, that makes sense. So how do we stay safe on this inner journey? What's like our metaphorical street smarts for the spiritual realm?
Well, Un viaje entre los mundos suggests some really practical approaches.
Okay, good.
One thing it talks about is like setting really clear intentions before you even begin exploring.
Oh,
That's like putting up energetic boundaries around yourself.
interesting.
It's like you're saying only experiences that are aligned with my highest good, are welcome here.
Okay, so intention is key. What else?
The book also talks about the power of visualization,
Okay.
like actually visualizing yourself surrounded by a protective light or calling upon, some kind of guiding energy that resonates with you. These things can be surprisingly effective.
So I'm picturing like a glowing force field around me right now.
Exactly. It's like putting on your psychic suit of armor.
Right. I love it. Okay, but all this talk about, challenges and needing protection and stuff kind of makes you wonder, like, why even bother venturing into these realms if it's not all, sunshine and rainbows?
That is the question, right? And I think it's because it's about so much more than just having these, interesting experiences or even pleasant experiences.
Okay.
It's about healing. It's about transformation. It's about, I think, really unlocking our full potential.
Right.
And remember that idea of these realms kind of being like reflections of our own consciousness.
Yeah.
Un viaje entre los mundos suggests that by facing our fears in these symbolic landscapes, by confronting those shadows, we can actually begin to heal these deep-seated wounds, within ourselves.
So it's like we're doing shadow work, but on this like multi-dimensional level.
Exactly. And what's really interesting is what often happens.
Okay, what's that?
By confronting what scares us in those realms, we find that those fears has less power over us in our everyday lives.
Oh, wow.
It's like we're integrating these, like fragmented parts of ourselves, and in the process, we become more whole, more resilient.
Okay, that's really powerful.
Yeah.
And it actually makes me think about what the book was talking about earlier with integrating these experiences into daily life. It's not just about escaping to another reality. It's about actually bringing back those insights and letting them kind of like transform us from the inside out.
Yes, that's the key. It's one thing to have these experiences,
Right.
but the real magic is what we do with them afterward.
So true. So how do we do that? Like, how do we bring back those spiritual souvenirs, I guess you could call them, from these inner journeys.
That's where the real work begins.
Okay.
It's about really paying attention to those synchronicities, to those little intuitive nudges.
Okay.
It's about that new awareness that emerges in your everyday life.
Okay.
So maybe it is a newfound sense of courage to finally go after that dream you've always had.
Right.
Or maybe it's this deeper sense of compassion that you feel for yourself and for other people.
It's like downloading a software update for your soul.
I love that. Yes.
And then, actually using those new features to live a richer, more authentic life.
That's it. That's it. And I think that's what Un Viaje a Otros Mundos really offers. It's this guidebook for exploring those uncharted territories within ourselves. And then, like you said, integrating those discoveries into the very fabric of who we are.
This has been one mind-expanding deep dive, I gotta say.
Yeah.
It's really challenged me to kind of reconsider my own perceptions of reality and what it means to really journey beyond the familiar.
And isn't that what a good journey is all about?
It really is.
Expanding our horizons, challenging our perspectives, and then returning home, forever changed by the experience.
Beautifully said. Beautifully said. A huge thank you to our expert for, sharing your wisdom and insights with us today.
It was my pleasure. Thank you for having me.
And to our listeners, thank you so much for joining us on this exploration of Un Viaje ante los Mundos. We hope you found some nuggets of inspiration to spark your own journeys of self-discovery. And until next time, keep exploring.